Greetings and welcome to Table Talks, where here at Shepherds Heart we bring in members of our community and talk about our community, a community that we love and that we love to give back to. Today I have with me and with us is Josh Tetens, our newly elected district attorney. Young man, listen to me, it sounded old.
I'm okay, gray.
You've got some gray, but a fine man that really loves this community and brings a lot of integrity to the office. But before we talk about that, Josh, how did you get to Waco?
Well, I grew up in Arlington. Father police officer, mother teacher, and didn't really have a big plan as to where I wanted to go, but came to one of the open houses, I guess, or recruitment deals that Baylor had, and I was hooked immediately. And came to Baylor, did my undergrad studies, ultimately law school, and have never left Waco since.
That's awesome. Met your wife here?
Yes, we met at Baylor. We were in the Baylor Interdisciplinary Corps, the BIC. We were the third class. They got to go through that program. It's a classical style of teaching, and you're one of 200 kids that start your freshman year all the way through your senior year. And we were in every class together in between, and it worked.
All right. And you have children? 3
children, Patriot, Glory, and Maverick.
Wow. I love those names. Strong names.
Strong names. We like to say when you had a Josh and Kelly, we had to do something better than that. Especially growing up, we were, Josh number 2 or Kelly number 3 in our generation. But we also have a great love of our country and of history and Texas and the United States. And so that's how we came up with those names.
I think that's awesome. My daughter and her husband have 3 boys that they've named Memphis, Montana, and Macon. So
there you go.
Yeah. Hey, again, the same kind of thing. Wanted something different and very patriotic, and so you love Waco, right?
Love Waco. We both, like I said, I grew up in Arlington. My wife in Plano, and I'd always expected to go back there. And once law school was finished, decided this had become our home. We had friends here, church family here, and no better place we thought to raise our kids.
Can't beat that.
Yes.
So when you come out of law school, how many different directions can you go?
Oh, gosh. Almost infinite, honestly. That's one of probably the greatest benefits of a JD is you really can do just about anything that you want to. And that's something that I'd always heard, but once you are actually in law school, there's so many different facets and areas of the law and beyond the law that businesses need, the community might need, government sector, private sector, you name it. But that being said, I always wanted to be in the courtroom. And that's ultimately why I chose Baylor Law, because they do such a good job at litigation. It's not fun by any means or necessarily enjoyable. When you get into Baylor Law, one of the first things they do is give you a t-shirt that says Baylor Law, where fun goes to die. Which is fairly accurate. But day after graduation, I was ready to try a case. And so that much more limited me as to what I would do and where I would do it.
And you talk about being a patriot. Obviously, we're a nation of law, so law is very important to the fabric of our society. Why so do you?
Well, like I said, Dad was a police officer. Before that, his grandfather was a deputy sheriff out in West Texas. Both grandfathers in the military. That was just part of my life. We had rules and they were to be followed. And I was not only raised that way, but that's historically how we've become such a great society, I think, is we have laws that we all follow and respect. And I want to be able to do that, both in the job that I've had on the criminal defense side, but now moving forward to the DA's office.
A lot of times we hear that the law restricts our freedom. Nothing could be farther from the truth.
Absolutely not. One of the things that you hear about and they joke about in Shakespeare. I can't remember the play off the top of my head, but one of the things he says is we're going to kill all the lawyers, and that's going to solve our problems. And ultimately, later on in the play, it just society dissolves. You know, our laws and attorneys and our judges, our judicial system, from top to bottom, are there to make sure that we do have freedoms, and those are respected and followed for everyone.
You have an inside view of our legal system. How healthy is it from your perspective?
Overall, it is healthy. There are many things that can be improved upon. If we're going to compare it to our body as a temple, you need to take care of that temple. You need to make sure that you're doing everything you can to protect it and better it. And I feel like there are many areas where not only is that just not happened in a long time, but maybe even intentionally being ignored to some degree. And so I hope to address many of those as the district attorney.
As if you were to have a conversation with each person in Waco and tell them how important it is, that they participate in the health of our legal system, how do we take care of this temple? How do I take care of this temple?
The easiest thing is jury duty. It's something that it's easily made fun of, and how can I get out of it? But without our jury system, and we are one of very few nations in the world that have a jury system, our system doesn't work. And so I've been doing this long enough that you've got some folks that couldn't be more excited to go and get called for jury duty, but they're the minority. Most people are doing everything they can to get out of it. Some folks also get very frustrated that they spend half a day up at the courthouse and then they're told to go home. And they don't know what was I here for? What was the point of that? Having a jury, having your peers, your people in the community there to judge cases is vital for it to work. So following up on that summons, showing up at the courthouse, taking half a day is something that truly makes that system work. I would say probably second to that would be being active in the community, knowing what's going on in the community. So many things that I think we try to react to later on after the fact could have been addressed and prevented if we were much more proactive. And so being involved at your community level, at the local level, in anything, nonprofit organizations, your church, any of that gets you out of your house, and for kids these days off their screens, is huge.
Yeah, very, very good. You said something there, I think that's really, really vital, and that's the importance of involvement, of knowing what's going on in your community. We live in a social media crazed world, and we don't always get the best picture. One of the reasons we're doing these table talks is to give a different perspective of what it is to volunteer, what it is to help meet the needs. And for us, it's meeting the needs of the hungry. How often do you think hunger comes into play to some of the cases that you've had to deal with? That it's maybe been a factor that kind of the hidden factor.
Oh, many times. There are certain types of cases and offenses that cover the full spectrum of economics. The poorest of the poor, the wealthiest of the wealthy can get caught up in it. Most common example of that's a DWI. Whether you're rich or poor, a lot of times you'll drink, and sometimes you drink too much and you get caught and you get in trouble. But many cases, drugs and thefts, assaults, unfortunately, you find kind of target a lower socioeconomic population. And many of those fights, thefts, are triggered by the need for food or hunger. I see that also even as a kid growing up with my mom being a teacher and later a school counselor, the stories she would tell, people we would go and help and offer food to that are in your own backyard, in your own school, and you have absolutely no idea what they're facing. So unfortunately, I do see a lot more of that in the position that I'm in, that people just don't have any idea it exists. And so by getting more involved in the community and knowing, even chamber groups, I think, have taken on a big role in addressing some of this. The Bellmead Chamber that I've been a part of for years has every holiday season, for Christmas, for Thanksgiving, turkeys that are delivered, and we target, families in that community, and I hear about other groups doing the same. I wouldn't have known about that if I hadn't been involved in that organization.
When you're a part of the giving side of things, that's as much a part of the change as the receiving side.
Probably even more so. Getting to see actual fruits of your labor, actually watching somebody get something that they need, seeing a smile on a kid's face, that goes further than making a donation, although those are very important. Don't get me wrong there. But actually being out there in that community, that role and participating goes so much farther. And I think it's important for other people to see you that are receiving that. They see that you care. You're out there, you're taking your time, your energies, and actually trying to help them.
It kind of takes some of the nostalgia is the wrong word. I'm drawing a blank. The stereotype.
Yes.
The stereotypes that come off, someone says there's Josh Tetens, the DA. Instantly, there's an expectation of behavior. There's an expectation of a conversation.
True.
How do you want to change that? Or how do you want to be known as the DA?
I hopefully approachable on one level. That's one of the things that I tried very hard to do, which made me also very tired, but I think effective. If there was an event, a community, a picnic, I went to some things that had 3 or 4 people at them. I went to others that had thousands of people at them. But just to talk to folks and not beat some political drum, rah, 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 vote for me, but how's it going? What do you do? What do you do in this community? Do you think anything needs to be changed? Is anything working really well that we need to keep, that we need to encourage? And just having those open conversations, I hope to continue to do that. I plan to continue to do that. I haven't slowed down since the election. But again, kind of beating a dead horse a little bit here. But you do start to see a lot of the same people at these events because they care about the community and they want to be more involved in the community.
Right.
I want to see more people there I don't know.
As the DA and as the again volunteer, you're wanting to make a difference in our community. You're very involved in Bellmead.
Yes, sir.
But you're the Waco District Attorney.
Right.
How do we best support you in your role as a community?
I think asking questions. A lot of it is just transparency. What is the DA's office doing? What type of crimes are being prosecuted? Which crimes may not be? Are certain crimes getting dismissed more than others? If so, why? Or are they getting, are you having more convictions of one crime versus another? Why? Something that I've talked to other prosecutors and I've seen, because I practice 16 years all across Central Texas, they make that more accessible to folks online or at the courthouse or, again, in the community, talking to groups, organizations, and saying, here's what we do. Here's what is happening. And so having more community questions to make sure that the job is being done right. And it's ultimately accountability for me, as well as every assistant prosecutor in that office.
I think that's awesome. If you were going to give a message to every person in Waco today, before I ask that, let me ask one more question. In some of your conversations during the the campaigning period. Was there a story that you heard that just made you go, wow, I didn't know that could happen here? And it can be any end of the scale, something that maybe wowed you at an expression of generosity or an expression of compassion or.
Sure. Well, I guess I'll give you two examples. I'll give kind of the wow, sad concern factor that unfortunately I heard too much of. And that was from victims, families of victims, just not really understanding the process. And not necessarily being ignored, but not having everything fully explained and not really being prepared or told of options. And so one of the things that I really hope to do from the very beginning, because my wife's been very involved with nonprofit organizations and I've been on the boards of several, is to try to make those resources more known and more available. And whether that's through the district attorney's office or through defense attorneys, folks that are in the criminal justice system, they're there not because they want to be, but it's something tragic happened.
They didn't stand up and say, hey, I think I wanted to get in the criminal justice system.
That's right. So they're at the lowest of the low, whether they are the charged individual or the victim or their family. But we have in this community so many different organizations that provide so many different things. But unless, again, you're very active in that world, you don't know they exist. And so I do hope to be able to consolidate some type of a list or resource guide or something that I can provide so that victims and their families in particular know that, hey, there's somebody I can talk to. There's an organization over here I can reach out for help from. And it might be as simple as getting diapers, food, paying their electric bill, housing, medications. All of these things are here in McLennan County, but they're in pockets and you just have to know where to find them. Now, on the much more positive side, something that I think, when we first came in and were talking about in today's political climate and running, and I'm glad I ran here, I said. And that was, I would go to the biggest meetings to the smallest ones. But one in particular, I had just announced that I was going to run for DA and went to a street dance in Moody, Texas on a Friday night. And I didn't know a single person. I had my name tag on and just out walking around. And I had probably half a dozen people, can I pray for you?
Wow.
And I didn't know a soul. They didn't know me, but it was just having a conversation. And, what we want to pray for you. And that was surprising wow, awe moment. And like I said, that was at the very beginning of the campaign, and that continued all the way to the last day.
I love it. So if you wanted to say something to each person in Waco or to every person in Waco about you, or what would that be?
I would say have faith in our criminal justice system. I think that the bad press that it might get, obviously, is a lot more exciting than the good press. And so we hear a lot more of that. But by being more involved and asking those questions, holding the DA's office as well as any judge position or anything else, law enforcement, hold all of us accountable and ask for that transparency. But don't give up on the system. The system works. It needs some TLC. It needs a little elbow grease, and I'm not afraid to do that. But by staying involved and asking those questions, I think we can make it better.
Sounds like you're accessible.
I'm accessible, absolutely.
What's the best way for someone to get in touch with you and ask a question? Email? Or?
Email's the fastest. I can check that anywhere on my phone if I'm in court, out of court, but it's just joshforda@gmail.com. So joshforda@gmail.com. That's the fastest way to get me.
I love it. Well, Josh, thank you for your time today. Thank you so much for your heart. I appreciate what you're bringing to Waco in the DA's office.
You bet. Thank you for having me.